horror hounds. Welcome back to Sheebie Jeebies, a horror podcast by fans, for fans, and about fans. While I know the majority of our content here are long-form conversations, I did want to take just a few minutes to do a quick review of Beetlejuice, because I've always been a fan of the original movie. And it's one of those IPs that hasn't been extremely diluted over the years. I was definitely very much like in the case of Ghostbusters, saw the movie, saw the cartoon, went to the stage show for real, had all the toys. And, Beetlejuice, we had one movie. We had a very short lived cartoon. We only got 2 seasons of it. And then it was pretty much nothing for years. You'd see occasional Beetlejuice merchandise pop up in Hot Topic. But that's about it. So before we get into the review, I want to remind everybody, this is spoiler heavy. So fuck off and go watch the movie and then come back, okay? Now, when the sequel was officially announced in 2022, I could not give one single french fried titty fuck about it. I wasn't interested in seeing yet another property I enjoyed just impotently resurrected with the odd intention of rebooting it. They end up being these rote ghosts of movies with too many callbacks that are just there to remind you of how much you love the original. But by hitting you with the little nostalgia bumps every few minutes, you're distracted enough that you don't really judge the new story being presented to you. Until much later. That's literally what happened to me with Ghostbusters Answer the Call. So Beetlejuice is guilty of this. The first trailer had me worried between the callbacks and Beetlejuice doing the CGI bug eyes and rolling tongue at a picture of his ex-wife. But I did warm up to the second trailer and to the clip of Beetlejuice and Dolores' meet cute. It felt like the tone was going in the right direction, and for the most part it does. Its biggest detriment, though, is how forced a lot of the humor is. Like, I'm being held hostage and expected to laugh. Also, I hate to harken back to Ghostbusters 2016, but it's kind of that vibe, but nowhere near as bad. It's like a fraction, like maybe 1/20th of that. So the first 20 minutes are pretty rough. If you can make it past that, I think you're going to have a good time. Lydia's hosting the show where she visits haunted houses and then interviews their owners on the show, and it's like if Crossing Over met Ghost Adventures. Her fiancé, Rory, played by Justin Theroux, is, I'm assuming, a producer on the show, but this character's the fucking worst. He's literally just there to be pretentious and obnoxious, and of course he doesn't really love Lydia, he only wants her money. And I just wish that Rory hadn't been such a slapstick character, because there's not a lot in this movie tethering it to reality. I mean, there's already so much of the slapstick energy from Delia, to the point where Beetlejuice looks like the toned down one. And speaking of which, Delia is, of course, still an eccentric artist. Catherine O'Hara is fabulous, although she overacts way too much in the beginning, even for Delia. And Winona Ryder also does a bit of this, too. So think Stranger Things Season 1 Joyce Byers, where she's just looking like a deer in the headlights the whole time. But Lydia and Delia's best moments actually come from their quiet conversations with each other, and you can see how the dynamics of their relationship have changed over the last 30 years. So, not when Delia is shrieking and Lydia's looking terrified. Anyway, so Charles Dietz dies on a bird-watching trip to South America when his plane crashes into the ocean. He survives at first, but he's eventually eaten by a shark. Now, all of this is presented as an animation, kind of like a Family Guy cutaway, which answered my question of, how are we doing this movie without Jeffrey Jones? They did technically use his likeness, and it pops up a couple more times on his tombstone, which is a glass shark's fin. It's one of the funnier sight gags, and in a painting. With Crispin Glover's lawsuit with Universal about Back to the Future 2, they made prosthetics with a face mold they had of him and slapped those on a different actor. And it was such a close resemblance that people on set would refer to him as Crispin. So I'm not sure about the legalities here. Like, Ghost Charles has the top half of his body missing, being the victim of a shark attack, but you can tell it's someone doing a Jeffrey Jones impersonation when he speaks. There's no credit for Charles on the IMDb page, and I didn't see one in the end credits either. So maybe that mystery will be revealed to us at a later date. There is a very fun running gag of Delia mourning him in over-the-top ways that I expected to be more annoying than they were. There's an entire black mourning veil over the whole house, and there's also the children's choir singing Deo at his funeral, and we get to hear a little bit of that in the trailer, but this is a longer version of Deo, and for some reason, the longer it goes, the funnier it is. And there's also her performing an ancient Egyptian ritual with a pair of defanged asps that are most definitely fanged and venomous, which kill her later in the movie. So, although I am mostly burned out on Jenna Ortega in horror, like go back and learn a new hold, please, literally just anything. Her performance as Lydia's daughter Astrid was exactly what this movie needed. She has the dry, sarcastic humor to bring us back to reality instead of whatever Looney Tunes shit the adults are doing. She does have an unnecessary romantic subplot with a boy who turns out to be a ghost, who turns out to have killed his parents and then fell out of a tree. Okay. Whatever. So he tells her he needs her help to become human again, and she doesn't know about the dead parents yet. So, and he promises her she'll be able to see her dead father if she goes with him to the afterlife and helps him. But, by the way, if you're looking for the Maitlands, it's explained, earlier in the movie, they found a loophole and moved on, so they aren't ghosts anymore. I guess she's not getting help from them. Also, what kind of fucking lazy writing is this? They found a loophole. They moved on. Okay. So, because I guess Lydia's the only person in this movie who hasn't read the handbook for the recently deceased and can't draw a door, she calls Beetlejuice and agrees to marry him if he helps her save Astrid. So he draws a bomb on a wall and blows up a portal into the afterlife, which is apparently illegal, but like Astrid just went over. So are the rules that it has to be a door? And so they go in through the back entrance, which is just to the call center that somehow Beetlejuice is the manager of. And I just feel like he didn't leave on good terms at the end of that movie. It's like, Juno didn't like his ass. How did he get another job there? How did he get into management? So Lydia and Beetlejuice go in, and the rest of the shrinkers that are working in that call center push past Bob, who's like the head shrinker. I mean, the shrinker in charge of all the other shrinkers, kind of, I guess. He's the one that's dressed like Beetlejuice. He's being a decoy for him. And the shrinkers escape into the real world, which is actually really fun, but never wrapped up. So they escape and presumably are never captured again. It's a big goodbye movie moment. And I'm just confused because, so can people see them? I never thought about the mechanics before, but I guess ghosts leaving the afterlife are just real again. Does that apply across the board? So, I mean, you could go get Astrid's dead dad, solve one problem there. So, Beetlejuice is trying to get Lydia to marry him in both of these movies so he doesn't have to stay in the afterlife. Is there an expiration date, though, on the shrinkers? Will they just, poof back into the ether after X amount of time if they don't get married? Did Wolf Jackson and his squad remember to go after them after they took Delia back with them to the afterlife? I don't really know why the shrinkers are in this movie, because they're not a species of ghost. There was a guy shrinking heads in the original. And I mean, I understand leaving him out because that was a racist stereotype, but why have all these fucking shrinkers running around then? Is it just because they look kind of cool and you can market them? Like you can market the mini puffs from Ghostbusters Afterlife? So, on the topic of unanswered questions, why did we need Beetlejuice's ex-wife in this movie? Monica Bellucci is stunning and I really enjoyed looking at her, but she does fuck all of nothing. She can suck the souls out of ghosts, essentially killing the undead, and she has an axe to grind with Beetlejuice. Okay, cool, got it. Nice conflict. When she finally shows up at his and Lydia's wedding at the end of the movie, she immediately gets eaten by a sandworm along with Rory. She's barely even serving the purpose as a kind of countdown timer to the end. So, similarly with Willem Dafoe, he doesn't have a lot to do. He's not quite as useless as the spare prick at the wedding, but the dead action star who can't break character as a hard-boiled cop just seems out of place. First he's mad at Dolores, then he's mad at Beetlejuice, and quite frankly, I don't know what's motivating them. He's just kind of there for more forced comic relief. Now, I know we're eventually going to see this get canceled on Twitter, but I have to ask, what's up with the Beetlejuice rape baby? No, really. Beetlejuice magically impregnated Lydia when she and Rory arrived in the model that first time, and out pops a Beetlejuice baby. So, If this was a movie that was actually trying to frighten me and was much darker in tone, sure, absolutely, that would freak me the fuck out. That's not what this movie is. This movie is Looney Tunes. And, it's called back later in a dream sequence, but this time Astrid gives birth to the Beetlejuice rape baby. For who and for why? So, as far as positives go, I will say Michael Keaton's return as Beetlejuice is nothing short of spectacular. And his performance is as energetic and mischievous as ever, and you would not know he's 70, 71, in his 70s, somewhere around there. He really hasn't missed a beat. He put down Beetlejuice for 35 plus years, and he's like, oh, just dust it off, let's go. And I was also pleasantly surprised by the visuals. So the use of practical effects combined with modern CGI makes it very palatable from what I was expecting. And it might be one of the biggest advantages it has. Kind of like, well, at least Michael Keaton was great and it's beautifully shot. Overall, I'd give it 3 out of 5 stars. You can get a baseline of 2 with me if you don't shit the bed, and it gets a 3rd for being mostly enjoyable. I'm not sure Gen Z is really going to vibe with the MacArthur Park wedding number or the Soul Train joke, though. Anyway, if you enjoyed this review, feel free to drop a like on your way out or share it with the rest of your degenerate friends. Socials are in the link below, and until next time, don't leave the cake out in the rain.